Stop to that then.
That's important.
You all know why we're here today. I know I am here to have a good meal and some wine. Yeah. Which is already happened. We're here to say something about Ralph. Now then,
Your brother.
I think I've been picked because I'm the only person who remembers before he was born.
Yeah.
Right, we'll start now then. We'll start at the beginning. He was born in a nursing home at Eden, just as I was. Now the doctor must have thought that my mother needed to be looked after and watched over. And so he ran a personal nursing home and my mother went in there. Well, I was born all right, I think. And so the next 4 years later, when it came to Ralph's turn, he went there as well. Now, I think it was my father went to look at his newborn child, and then perhaps my mother's mother, who also lived in Guiseley, went, not on the same day, they lived all that friendly, and then my father one day decided to take me. And I can't remember whether it was the day when you came home or not, with my mother, or some other time, but I forget that completely. But when he was getting me ready, apparently, according to my mother, several years later, she told me that he really wanted a daughter, and he never got one. But he tried to mask that by saying, "We don't really want a girl anyway, do we?" And he said that to me. We don't want a little girl here. And he said something else, which I'll tell you later. And, so we got ready. We went to this place. Went in at the door. The nurse took us upstairs. And my mother was there, this baby, and a couple of nurses, and I saw them on my mother, of course, and she showed me the new baby. And then one of the nurses said to me, wouldn't you have liked a little sister? And I said, no. Remember what my father had told me? I said, no, if it had been a girl, we'd have put it in the dustbin. My father was laughing, and my mother laughed as well. She knew he put me up to it. And he was trying to look as though he had nothing to do with it. The nurses looked horrified. And I was wondering what kind of a person I was going to grow up into. You know now, don't we? Anyway, we brought him home, and that was it. Now, the second episode I can think of was, he'd probably be about 2 years old. And at that time, he was always blonde, and his head was full of golden curls. A look which he tried to replicate several years later, if I remember. Yeah. And, now one day, my mother went to the shop. My father worked shifts in those days. I had a 6 o'clock till 2 or 2 o'clock till 10. And so he was at home at that time. And my mother went to the shop. And as soon as she'd gone, my father said, "Right, we're going to make you look like a little boy now." And he sat him on the buffet and put the cloth around his shoulders and gave him a short bow inside.
What did you take him to Ducking Hall?
No, my father did.
What did you yourself? Ducking Hall. It's the power. How hard is true?
When my mother came over and saw him, of course, she burst into tears, but it was too late then. The evidence had been burnt on it.
Yeah, okay, didn't you? Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, what can I think of the third? Oh, the third one. Right, we move on to November 1933 now. I was about 6.5 and Ralph would be 2.5. And at that time, I used to catch everything that was going in the form of illnesses, and I'd already had whooping cough, chicken pox, measles, and in 1933 it was scarlet fever, so of course I caught that. Now in these days it's just a minor illness apparently, but in those days it was a 6-week stay in hospital. There was an isolation hospital at Metzner. I think it was somewhere near where the Fox and Hounds is now, on the opposite side of the road.
Were you there as well?
Well, I was in. Oh, my grandmother, I remember, came to see me in the bedroom, and she said, she talked to me quite, as though I should understand everything like that. And she said, now you're going to have to go away for 6 weeks and then you'll be better and you can come home. And so I was quite philosophical in those days, and I thought, well, if I've got to do it, I've got to do it. So I never shed a tear or anything. Pretty much the same as when I went in the army. I just thought, well, if it's to do, it's better to do. And that's that. So I went. 6 weeks later, came home again, all right. I had to go to my grandparents, just to keep out of the way of Ralph, you see. And it was Christmas, I think, then. So I couldn't have any Christmas presents until I came back home again. In case if the same as my grandparents, they'd have come home with germs on, apparently, you see. So, I should have mentioned that it came from the council to fumigate the house. Yeah. And so, anyway, they'd come a second time because when I came home, Ralph caught it. Yeah. I don't know whether he got it from me or it was just going around. No, it was going around, I suppose. And so, now unlike me, who was in bed, feeling all sickly and ill at the time, Ralph was quite boisterous. And I remember the doctor coming to see him, and I can just remember now, he was standing near the fireplace with my mother, and my mother, tear-filled eyes, of course, and she said, can't we keep him at home, doctor? He's so young, you know. And the doctor, no, I'm afraid he'll have to go because there could be complications. And in that case, they'd know what to do. So, anyway, now, the ambulance came. Now, Ralph called it the caravan, and it looked like one because it was all a wooden bodywork, hadn't it, on top of the chassis. And my father had unwisely told him when I went, well, they won't take you, we won't let them take you. If they try and come and take you, I'll get my axe out of the cellar and chop it up. A rather unwise thing to say. Anyway, I remember that day, Ralph, we had fish and chips for dinner, and Ralph tucked in heartily, he wasn't like me, he lost his appetite. And then he was playing football with my father, and father said, you can do whatever you want to do. And they were kicking the ball around in the house. And this vehicle come up the back street. Now, there was nobody up our street owned cars in those days. It was just the old delivery van. So it cost quite a stir if you heard a motorised vehicle go up the street. So Ralph looked at the window and he saw it. The caravan, he said. And he ran straight to my father and clutched his leg. Anyway, they knocked on the door, my mother had to go and answer it. And this nurse came in at the door, and I recognised her, Nurse Johnson, they called her. She was on my ward when I was in. And of course, she recognised me as well. She was just a young girl, about 17, but I thought she was a grown-up, you know. And she said, now then, so we've come for this one now, have we? And something like that. And she went across again. That's when Ralph was clinging to my father's leg, and my father picked him up and handed him over. I remember an old joke once on the radio about 50 years ago. I won't attempt the accent, but it was about this Jewish chap, and he had a little boy. And he said, he stood his little boy on the table and said, jump and I'll catch you. So the little boy jumped and his father stood aside and let him fall on the floor. And then he said, now let that be a lesson to your son. Never trust anyone, not even your own father. And I thought, Ralph must feel like that. I don't really ever thought about it in later years, but my father certainly let him down there.
Did you escape when you got to the caravan?
Yeah, I got out and ran. And went after me and fetched me back.
I could hear him screaming all the way up the road, and apparently a woman had met my mother next day down Guiseley, and my mother told her the story, and she said, that must have been him then. She said, I was at the top of the road here, and the ambulance went by, and I could hear screams coming from it. And anyway, apparently he spent the first day to in hospital doing nothing but scream.
Oh, well, I don't remember.
And I laid him down in his cot and he kicked all the clothes off and stood up and screamed all day and all night apparently. But anyway, he did get home again eventually.
Yeah.
I suppose he didn't explain to you that you were getting better to when you were...
Well, no, he was too young to know, wasn't he?
No.
So, anyway, he came back home again in time. And that's 77 years ago now, and he's still here.
Yeah.
So I think that's about all I have to say. I'll let him explain the other 77 years. Catch him as he wants to tell you. He's done all sorts in that time. He went in the army and out again, and met Angelina, got married, 3 children. Played cricket all his life, was secretary of the cricket club and the camera club. And
Did you see him?
yeah, that's a good story. But anyway, he retired from work and settled down, and here he is now.
There is, yeah.
So I think that's all about all I have to say. So. When he was my age, he was quite a modest affair, wasn't it? It was just James and Annabelle and their respective partners, and Ralph and Angelina and me went there, didn't they?
Yeah.
Went Harrogate. But anyway, I'll hand over to you, darling.
Right, thank you very much. Yeah. Right. Well, thank you all for coming here. And thank you, Kenneth, for your speech. And I don't believe it's my 80th birthday, actually. I think it's the 18th. But having looked at the photographs, I think it must have gone on for quite some time to get all those photographs on the wall there. But I was born in 1931, which was not a good year. It was 2 years after the Wall Street crash. We were in the middle of a depression. There was a lot of unemployment, and the government under Ramsay MacDonald, the Prime Minister, were making a mess of the economy. That was 80 years ago. They wouldn't do that nowadays. We had a radio in those days, but we couldn't listen to it. It had headphones, and my father used to sit in his armchair and laugh at the comedians' jokes, and we all had to keep quiet and not say a word. And I think the first time we got a radio with a loudspeaker, it was when King George V died, and I heard about the king dying and the new dashing Prince Edward becoming the King of England. But that didn't last long. He was off with Mrs. Simpson, and that was the end of that. And then, of course, yeah. And then, of course, and then there was, of course, Hitler coming along in Germany, Mussolini in Italy, and Franco in Spain, and we were heading for the war. We all realised there was going to be a war, and of course my father was very pessimistic about it. And eventually, of course, the war happened, and then the fall of France came, and we listened to a Churchill on the radio saying, "I've nothing to offer you but blood, toil, sweat and tears."
Sounds like marriage.
My mother said, my father said, "Well, they'll be here in a month, they'll be here." But he got a plan. He wasn't going to let the Germans capture us. He had an old Lee Enfield rifle that had been given to defend Britain against the German power troops, and he had 5 rounds of ammunition, and he said he was going to shoot us with the four of the rounds, and then use the other 1 round remaining to fight the Germans. But I didn't think much of that idea. I thought I'd run away and go and hit the youth. But luckily it didn't come to that, and during the war my mother and Kenneth went to work at the Avro. And us 2 children, of course, I was 9 when the war, 8 when the war started, and my younger brother was 5. And when Ken and my mother went to the Avro, I think we would be 10 or 11, 10 I think. And we had to go to my grandmother's after school and stay there till 7:30 or so until my mother came home. And we had to do the errands, and in those days you had to queue up. And I'd go with my brother and we'd go to the market on a Saturday, and I'd put him in the longest queue to save my place, and I'd go in the other queue, and we'd be queuing up for anything between 45 minutes and an hour, waiting to get served. But one day he got served before me, and then I heard this big row going on, and I went to see what was happening, and there was my brother with his red face arguing with the shop assistant, and I went to ask what had happened. My brother said, I gave him a 3-shilling piece. So that was the end of that argument. And then after the war, of course, I was called up and went in the army. I went to Germany, and I was working at the headquarters with the commanding officer and adjutant and second in command. But one of my jobs was to make the tea. And I used to make a good cup of tea, which the colonel enjoyed. And there was a war in Korea going on at that time, and if you'd been in the army more than 6 months, and you've still got more than a year to do, they would draft you to go to Korea, to the war. And so one day, it was my turn, the orders came through, I had to be sent to Korea. And the colonel crossed my name off and wrote somebody else's name on and said, "It's too valuable to send, he makes a good cup of tea." So that got me after that. After the war, of course, I came back and started playing cricket with guys. And one of my most famous matches, when I'd just come back, was, I'd only just come out of the army, so they didn't let me open the bowling then. And I didn't get on to bowl until there were 4 wickets down. And then I took 5 wickets in 6 balls and finished the match off. And I finished up with 6 wickets for no runs. And in those days, the Wharfdale came out on a Friday, and I was waiting all week to see this about me in the Wharfdale. And eventually, I went and collected the Wharfdale from the newsagents on the Friday, opened it, nothing about me whatsoever. Because in the Wharfdale, they looked at this and thought, it wouldn't have got 6 wickets for no runs, it must be no wickets for 6 runs. That's the way they printed it. And so I got no praise for that one either. And then the next important things, of course, that happened to me was meeting Angelina and getting married, and having Anna Maria and Paul and Peter. And after that, well, you can see that they've all developed somewhat since those days. And I was working in textiles then. I had well over 100 Pakistanis to look after, and there was no other white person in the mill quite often, and I was looking after them. But they weren't the trouble. The trouble was the managing directors, who were completely insane. They were all right the first year, but after about 3 years, it just went to the heads, and they went completely mad. And one day they said to me, "You're letting people sleep on the roof." And I said, "Nobody sleeps on the roof in January when it's freezing." He said, "Yes, we found a bed on the roof." And he said, "You go up and look." And so I had to go up and look on the roof, and sure enough there was a piece of cardboard on the roof, which had been left there after they'd painted the windows white. But in summer, when the sun was so hot through the windows, they'd gone up and painted the windows white and knelt on the cardboard and left it there. But the managing director thought that was a bed. Another time he came in just before 8 o'clock in the morning. He said, "Why aren't they all working? Nobody's working. What are you doing? Why are you letting them all sit about?" I said, "We haven't started yet." He said, "It's 9 o'clock, look at it." I said, "No, we put the clocks back on Saturday night." This was Monday.